We have audio. Yes, people can hear us. Anyway, well. Frank, do you feel comfortable praying us in here? Thank you, Frank. Well, welcome everybody. Good to have you. Good to have Charlotte back. Uh, and that's great. And we are continuing our study of Ecclesiastes. We are now about to get into chapter 9. And as usual, we'll start out by reading the chapter and then we'll go back and make a few comments. Ecclesiastes chapter 9. So I reflected on all this and concluded that the righteous and the wise and what they do are in God's hands. But no man knows whether love or hate awaits him. All share a common destiny, the righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, clean and the unclean, those who offer sacrifices and those who do not. As it is with the good, so with the sinful. As it is with those who take oaths, so with those who are afraid to take them. This is the evil in everything that happens under the sun. The same destiny overtakes all. The hearts of people, moreover, are full of evil, and there is madness in their hearts while they live, and afterward they join the dead. Anyone who is among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better off than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. Their love, their hate, and their jealousy have long since vanished. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun. Go, eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved what you do. Always be clothed in white, and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life, and in your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise, or wealth to the brilliant, or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all. Moreover, no one knows when his hour will come. As fish are caught in a cruel net, or birds are taken in a snare, so people are trapped by evil times that fall unexpectedly upon them. I also saw under the sun this example of wisdom that greatly impressed me. There was once a small city with only a few men in it, and a powerful king came against it, surrounded it, and built huge siege works against it. Now, there lived in that city a man, poor but wise, and he saved the city by his wisdom. But nobody remembered that poor man. So I said, wisdom is better than strength. But the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are no longer heeded. The quiet words of the wise are more to be heeded than the shouts of a ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. Well, as like that famous line from a famous movie, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride. This is we're in the portion of Ecclesiastes where you might call true lies. Yeah, they're true, but there's something missing here. This is, you know, Solomon keeps talking about life under the sun. Well, this is 100%, in fact, it's 110% life under the sun. This is what life looks like in this current world system, especially if you choose to live it apart from God. It's going to be basically whatever is happening to you, whatever good things you may be happening, enjoy them while you can, because this is as good as it gets. Or so that is the conventional thinking. And it lightens up. Solomon's tone will eventually lighten up, but right now he is 110% Hebel. Hebel being the Hebrew word for meaningless or meaninglessness, smoke and vapor, things that have little, if no value at all, because of their transient nature. And he gets right into it. He says, what advantage do the righteous people have? Going back up to chapter 9, verse 1. I reflected on all this, and I concluded that the righteous man and the wise man and what they do are in God's hands. But no man knows whether love or hate awaits them. All share a common destiny, the righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, clean and the unclean, those who offer sacrifices, those who do not. Those, as Solomon is saying, in other words, those who scrupulously follow God's law and what God has laid down for them, especially in this Jewish culture, the law of Moses, the system of sacrifices, the laws that they are to live by. Solomon is saying, the person who goes through life doing everything he can to obey God and follow his law. At the end of the day, basically, he's going to come to the same end in his life that the wicked, the unrighteous person is going to come to. And it's almost like Solomon is saying, it's really unfair for me to live as a good guy only for me to die just like a bad guy. Well, basically, what you see is what you get in this current system, in this world system. Death is the great equalizer. Everyone goes to the same place. Everyone has the same destiny. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how good you've been, or conversely, how bad you've been, Solomon is saying, because you get the same reward at the end. It's a grave. As it is with the good, so with the sinful, as it is with those who take oaths, that is, those who take vows and live scrupulously, it's the same fate with those who are afraid to take them. He says, this is the evil. Yeah, it's a bad thing. It's not fair. Everything that happens under the sun. We're in verse 3, the same destiny overtakes all. The hearts of people, moreover, are full of evil, and there's madness in their hearts while they live. Afterward, they join the dead. Solomon is just taking that point and pounding it into the ground. Anyone who is among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better off than a dead lion. Ouch. Little cultural reference here. Solomon and people of his day would definitely respect a lion for its power, for its might, for its strength. And of course, a dog back in the day, we're not talking about house pets, we're talking about animals that were really a public nuisance. If you had dogs in the neighborhood, oh man, you got to do something about these animals. They're knocking over the trash cans. They're doing everything. They're just making a nuisance of themselves. And here Solomon is saying, even a despicable dog that's living and breathing is better off than this mighty lion that's dead. Furthermore, for the living know they will die. They know what awaits them. But the dead know nothing. They have no further reward. And even their name is forgotten. You know, this Solomon is referencing a point he made earlier on about how, gee, when you die, give it a generation or two, and most people will have forgotten who you are, will have very little, if any, knowledge about who you are. That's just the way of the world. The dead have no further reward. Even their name is forgotten. Their love, their hate, their jealousy, all the passions that defined and drove their lives. All those passions basically have all gone away. They're all forgotten. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun. Keep in mind, this is the emphasis. There's a reason why Solomon keeps saying that. And by the way, that's at least the 24th time that I've counted that he's used that phrase, under the sun. He'll use it probably 4 more times before he's done. But he's making a point here. He's talking about everything under this, basically the world system here on earth that we are all part of, that we are all bound by. He's not talking about anything above the sun. And in other words, anything that is spiritual, anything that the rest of the story in terms of how God has created and runs the heavens and the earths. The only thing that we know about is what's happening under the sun, what we see, and what we experience. So with that pessimistic assessment, Solomon continues, verse 7, go eat your food with gladness, drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved what you do. Gee, have we heard this before? Yeah, once more with feeling. Eat your food with gladness, drink your wine. Always, verse 8, always be clothed in white and always anoint your head with oil. 2 things that people of that day did when they were joyful, when they were celebrating good things that were going on. They dressed themselves in white and they anointed their faces so they would have this very, very shiny look, radiant look. So go ahead and do that. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this meaningless, empty life that God has given you under the sun. All your meaningless, empty days, for this is your lot in life and your toilsome labor under the sun. Gee, Hebel, Hebel, Hebel. Eat, drink, and be merry. I know this is getting into a habit, but I mentioned that this was the slogan of Dairy Queen, and just to make sure that I wasn't imagining it, yes, they actually did a I am not responsible for anyone who rushes out after watching that ad and going out to the Dairy Queen and ordering a Blizzard. That's on you. It's not on me. And I thought, but it's just that's interesting that they would use that as their slogan. This was back in that commercial dates back to the late '60s, early '70s. Apparently, this was a major rebranding for Dairy Queen to make them well. We're just as good at McDonald's and all these other fast food burger joints. So anyway, and that's the slogan that they hit upon: eat, drink, and be merry. Probably not realizing or caring that hey, you're pulling up in essence a phrase that just reverberates throughout Ecclesiastes. And oh, by the way, yeah, there is a variation of that phrase in the New Testament. Paul uses it in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 32, where he says that if the dead are not raised, then let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Gee, if is that all there is? Is that all there is? Well, that's all there is, let's break out the booze and have a ball. What Solomon seems to be saying. Eat your food, drink your wine. Hey, dress up, party, uh, enjoy life with your wife or your significant other, uh, for as long as God allows you to live your pitiful, meaningless life on this earth. Whatever your hand, verse 10, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead where you are going, there is neither working nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. You can't read this without wondering, what did Solomon know about the afterlife? And did he simply not know it, or is he just for the sake of a theoretical argument, just pushing that aside and describing life strictly in terms of life apart from God? I'd like to think it's the latter, but if there are any doubts about what awaits us in the afterlife, I just want to drop in here another quote from Paul. It's a letter to the Philippians, chapter 1, verse 23, where he says, I'm glad I'm here. I've been delivered from all these hardships and these dangers to be here and working with you. And quite frankly, I can go either way in terms of what awaits me in my life, whether I live or whether I die. He says, in fact, I have a preference. It's not necessarily a death wish in terms I'm suicidal here. It's in fact, he says, I am so confident about what awaits me that when I die, uh, I'm going to be with Christ instantaneously. The last breath I take here on earth, the next moment is I'm face to face with Christ. And in verse 23, he says, I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far. Man, that would be the better option here. But God's not finished with me yet. Jesus is not finished with me yet. They still have work for me to do here. And that includes working with you guys. So I rejoice with that, and I'm rejoiced that I'm going to stay here and be able to work with and continue to work with you guys. So we know what awaits us as Christians, and it's a joyous occasion. And whether Solomon understood that or knew about it, that's a topic of discussion. But he goes on, and this is another cynical, unhappy notation about our lives here under the sun. He says, verse 11, I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise, or wealth to the brilliant, or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all. In other words, yeah, it's good to work hard and work for a reward. And many times that will happen, but there are many times when it doesn't at all, you know. Uh, kind of makes me, it kind of reminds me of one of the great quotations about 80% of success is just simply showing up. and just being in the right place at the right time. Yeah, that happens that way. And yeah, there are all sorts of heartbreaking stories about, for example, uh, folks who train themselves for the Olympics, for some kind of physical feat or race, and they everybody knows they're in great shape. They are in an excellent condition to when they get into that race, they're going to win it. They're in it to win it. They will win it. Only something happens at the last minute. They they, they become ill, or they break a leg. Basically, they encounter something that takes them out of the competition, and another person gets it. And that's heartbreak. It really is. Solomon says, "Yeah, it happens." In fact, that's kind of the fact of life here. Time and chance happens to everybody. The good things can happen to people and can come to people who don't necessarily deserve them. But Solomon says bad things can happen and can come to people at the oddest times, and not necessarily things that the people deserve. Verse 12, he says, "No one knows when his hour," that meaning the hour of his or her death. Nobody knows when that hour will come. As fish are caught in a cruel net, or birds taken in a snare, so people are trapped by evil times that fall unexpectedly upon them. Yes, we see that. We we've seen it before many of us reach adulthood. We've seen or we've read news stories about bad things that happen, and bad things that happen to good people, all too unexpectedly and all too often, and they break your heart. The day of evil comes upon those folks, and there's very little that they can do about it. He goes on, verse 13, and this is like, here is an observation that Solomon makes that, is kind of like, well, for what it's worth, for what little worth it is, he talks about the fleetingness of fame and accomplishment. He said, verse 13, "I also saw under the sun this example of wisdom that greatly impressed me. There was once a small city with only a few people in it, and a powerful king came against it, surrounded it, and built huge siege works against it. These people were toast. They were, give them a few days, maybe they could last a few weeks, but this king was going to rout them out, going to starve them out, basically get them to the point where they had no option but to surrender, maybe get killed. And yet there was this wise man. Basically, compare this guy to the king. He was nothing compared to this king. He didn't have any kind near the influence, the power, the military might. I mean, they didn't even begin to compare with one another. But a poor man comes, and he saved the city by his wisdom. Solomon doesn't get into the details. He just says, "Hey, this guy did the impossible. He saved the city from certain doom and certain death. Whatever he did, it worked." The details are not important here in this parable that Solomon's telling. The point that Solomon is making here is, after that joyful day, after that great victory for the city, what happens to the man? Do they rename the village after him? Do they build even a statue in his honor? Nope. Nobody remembered that poor man. "Oh man, thanks, guy, for saving our city. Now go away." Apparently, and that's what happened. So, verse 16, Solomon said, "Wisdom is better than strength." And that still holds true. Wisdom saved this city, even if it's not properly rewarded. Even if the poor man's wisdom is despised and his words are no longer heeded. Is there a common day comparison? Well, one that comes to mind. Think World War II. Think Great Britain. And think of the Battle of Britain, where Nazi Germany was sending all these planes over and just bombing the heck out of London, bombing them hopefully into submission, into asking for negotiated settlement, as basically bombing them to break their morale. And into this breach steps a guy named Winston Churchill, who becomes prime minister. And in terms of what the Germans are throwing at Britain, he's got nothing. He has very little. All he has to offer is, as he tells the British people, are blood, sweat, and tears. It's not the name of a rock group. That's where that phrase came from. But it was through the ingenuity and the grit and the determination and courage of Winston Churchill that he pulled Great Britain away from the brink of destruction or a very, very bad outcome, and actually led to ultimately to the defeat of Germany and victory in World War II. Shortly after the end of the war, Winston Churchill called for an election of parliament. He said, it was time, and he pushed it as far as he could, but he wanted to honor that system. So, let's have an election. And he thought, hey, me and my party, we will be properly rewarded for the wonderful work we've done, guiding and piloting this country through World War II. As it turned out, the voters turned him out of office. It was like, thank you, Winston. Now please go away. We want somebody else running the country. And so they did, at least for a while. It happens. And sometimes, even in the face of spectacular and very courageous acts that you would think, hey, people would recognize and reward, it happens. We have 2 more verses in chapter 9. Let's take a look at those. He says, even though you're not going to be rewarded for it, if you are a wise man, if you practice your wisdom, ultimately it's the better thing to do. Verse 17, the quiet words of the wise are more to be heeded than the shouts of a ruler of fools. Oh, yeah. And then wisdom is better than weapons of war. Yeah. We probably don't know the number of times where great diplomacy, great tact, and great negotiations kept various countries out of war that could have led to worse things. So wisdom is better than weapons of war. But one sinner destroys much good. When I read that phrase, I think of the series of Pink Panther movies. And Inspector Clouseau, probably the most incompetent detective who, in literature, and his poor boss, Chief Inspector Dreyfus. At one point, the guy is so frustrated, Mr. Dreyfus is, that he says, give me 10 men like Clouseau, and I could destroy the world. I just love that line because, that's true. Put 10 people in who are just totally incompetent, who don't know what they're doing, and they could really wreak havoc and ruination. And look at the word one sinner who destroys much good. We think of sinner as somebody who's deliberately doing wrong or maliciously doing wrong. That is the case, yes. But keep in mind the meaning of the word sinner or sin, which is the most basic definition of sin is to miss the mark. So a sinner is someone who is not necessarily malicious or evil. It could be someone who is missing their mark by incompetence, by not knowing what they're doing. And unfortunately, in some cases, they press on rather than ask for help, rather than stepping back and saying, this is not what I should be doing. They persist in doing the same dumb things over and over and over again. We've probably seen we've experienced things like that probably in our own lifetimes, where we've had to deal with people who are put in charge of a project or put in charge of a department, and they they're inexperienced. They have no idea what they're doing, and they refuse to ask for help, and they really do run things into the ground. That happens. So, on that cheerful note, chapter 9 comes to an end. That, Solomon didn't write chapters and verses here. Somebody came along afterward and said, "Hey, let's do that." But they this is probably a good stopping point for this chapter, because when you get into chapter 10, which I hope you will take some time to read this week, it's going to read like Proverbs 2.0 or maybe 3.0, because it's just going to be proverb after proverb after proverb after proverb of, you might call them life under the sun proverbs, because that's what they are. But they're worth looking into and discussing. So if you will, uh, take some time to look at chapter 10, and Lord willing, that's what we'll discuss when we get here next week. Hey, the good news is that it looks like we might actually get some rain. All the weather experts are saying, hey, it's going to rain, and we might get anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, even out in the hill country where the lakes could really use it. So let's hope that happens. The lakes will be happy. The lake people will be happy. I think Darren will be happy if we get some, some of that happens to get over into Mason. We could all be very happy people next Sunday if that happens. So let's continue to pray for rain, not floods, but let's pray for rain. Be safe, hydrate, don't stay out in the sun too long, and Lord willing, we'll be back here next Sunday. Thanks a lot.